How do we get that poster?
Yeah. You'll have to catch it when they take it back down.
Okay, I'll be there.
Yeah, that poster is huge. This is
Right,
just one of the objects
left, left.
in the museum. It's a emerald, of course, and everything here is designed by a single person. His name is Robert Procop. He doesn't have a storefront at all. He's a designer, and he does do retail as well with Saks Fifth Avenue and other big name realtors. And he also does private work as well. So he doesn't have a storefront. He's a very nice person. He's in Beverly Hills. He's an LA native. And that's one of the things that was really nice working with him. Everything was pretty local. So instead of like just showing you a whole bunch of the amazing gems, well, I'm definitely going to do that. I'm going to show you the process of how we design the exhibit and what sorts of things were involved. Because I get this question all the time. It's like, why don't I just do more exhibits? Why don't I just put stuff in a case and have at it? And you'll see it, to make it look really, really nice, it takes a huge amount of work. So that's the amount of people that were involved in this. There's the NHMLA team, which has me, of course, project manager or collections manager, a 2D designer, a 3D designer, the registrars to keep track of everything, loans coming in and out, lighting supervisor and lighting techs, and the exhibit technicians, the people who are putting things together, and conservators as well that help clean the jewels and gems. They also help mount them and make sure that nothing in the cases is potentially reactive with the metal or the gems, or also they earthquake proof everything in case we have an earthquake, nothing falls off the mounts like we had one a couple days ago. We had a small earthquake and some of the gems actually moved a little bit. It was only 3.3. So we have to worry about those kinds of things. On Robert's side, or our external collaborators, was Robert Procop. We had external content developers. We also had 2D designers, and we had a filmmaker. So it's like it's a huge amount of people involved with this. So at the beginning, we have to describe what goals they are. And these goals have to be approved by the executive staff. That includes the president of the museum. If she's not happy with the idea, the content, even just the premise of the exhibit, she won't let it go on. So they have to hit certain goals. It has to be something of and for and with LA. So, or with people in general. So LA County residents, they would get something out of this museum. So we wanted to introduce people not to just gems and jewels, but also the science. So introduce the visitors to different gems and how they're used in different scientific fields, educate people about geologic processes, display exceptionally rare gemstones, and also try to bring in people to the museum. Of course, that's why we do this, try to attract visitors and also try to attract jewelry industry as well. And this gem here on the right is the second largest pink diamond in the world. It's a fancy vivid pink diamond, 42 carats in size. It is absolutely huge. And that's one of the objects that you can see in the exhibit.
Oh.
Here is a couple more. So in total, we have 150 objects that we had to keep track of all the time. These were being loaned to us from places all over the world that Robert has worked with. The center stone is a giant faceted emerald from Colombia, surrounded by diamonds. And the one on the right is probably one of the largest blue diamonds in the world. It's bigger than the Hope Diamond at the Smithsonian. It's a 46 point something carat blue diamond. And there's 32 cases. There's a new video as well. We're not going to show the Gemstones of America video probably ever again. Sorry. That's been on display since 1980 something. It's time for a new one. So we made a new video. So some of the big ideas that we were trying to get out from this was that gems are artistically and scientifically important. We've been using gemstones for the last 2,000 plus years as a culture. but they're also used in a lot of scientific research. And the tricky part is like, how do you blend those two ideas together? How do you convey scientific research, and also how do you convey the art and design of these jewels? So before the gems went on display, I actually got a chance to do a bit of research on them, which was nerve-wracking, because if I did something wrong, like burned a small hole in one of these emeralds, it would be a little bit troubling, to say the least. So this ring here, this is a ring on top left, is Brooke Shields's, one of Brooke Shields's rings. And it's this big cabochon emerald. And when I got it into the lab, I was able to look inside of it and collect data on it, and found that there was tiny little gas inclusions within it that you normally can't see. These gas inclusions are only about the size of a bacteria. They're absolutely tiny. And they have lots of organic gases still trapped inside of them. So that tells us a little bit something about the geological process that formed these things, that there was possibly a subduction event causing the bringing organic material down. The rock was then eventually transformed into metamorphic schists, but the organics still persisted and were preserved in the gemstones that were growing there. Now, this is really nice because gemstones are super clear, they're clean. We can do the microscopy on them pretty easily because you can see pretty far into the gemstone. If other minerals that grow in these metamorphic environments are not necessarily gemmy, there are opaque crystals, starlights and kyanites and sillimanites. It's difficult to see inside of them, but gems you can see really, really clearly. So we can get lasers in and out of them pretty easily. So that's just one example. We had diamonds in there. In total, I had about 8 different stones from the exhibit that I was doing research on. So some of that content eventually worked its way into the development of the exhibit. And another goal was to show the design process. A lot of people are not aware of it. And there's lots of different ways that people design jewelry, and that is an art form in itself. So these are some of Robert's sketches on the left. We'll have some more of them later on. How he designs is very architectural, similar to Van Cleef Arpels' way of designing jewelry, where Cartier and Tiffany are much more artistic and really don't design something practical on paper, but when it goes to production, it's very, very practical. Where Robert Procop does things like by the book, and he makes things more architectural on paper. And the end result is pretty magnificent. We also wanted to convey gemstone localities, where these things come from. A lot of people don't know where world sapphires come from, or where a lot of diamonds come from, or how even their colors change from region to region. So we wanted to exemplify that. And what would they feel? This is not my area of expertise. I'm not sure how to convey feeling through gemstones. But some of the people on the design team thought there would be just this astonishment of these exceptionally rare gemstones and beautiful jewels that are being presented. They may feel inspired somehow to go out, I don't know, do something artistic. Maybe not necessarily with gems, but do something that they find passionate about. And also make the connection between gemstones and science. Gemstones are used for adornment, but they are also quite valuable for researchers as well. Researchers don't spend a lot of time on gemstones because they're crazy expensive and it's difficult to get our hands on them. So sensory goals, what the visitors will see is they're going to see lots of rings. Robert Procop designs lots of rings. So you're going to see plenty of rings when you come in. And this is just an example of a color change sapphire. It's about 20 karat to color change sapphire. It goes from purple to green. And you can see that in the exhibit. We installed a color change light in the exhibit, so you can see how it goes from incandescent light, 2700 kelvins, to sunlight, which is about 7,000 kelvins, and you can see that color change happening. We also wanted to show what the crystals look like, of course, before they're cut into gemstones. And then also exhibit some of Robert's design process and how he creates things going from rough all the way to jewelry. He was also a gem cutter in his early years as a student. So here's the Gem and Mineral Hall. This is an big, broad overview. The entrance to the Gem and Mineral Hall is on the bottom right of this image. And it's difficult to get people back to the vault because of the layout of this hall. Those parallelogram cases that are in the middle of the hall are immovable objects. We cannot take them out. They're not going anywhere. They are huge, and the minerals in them are glued to the bases. So they're not going anywhere. So any exhibits that we do, we have to use some of the more flexible parts of the hall, and that's in the back cases. Those are the gem vault on the left, that's section 6, and also section 2 and section 3, those are collectors cases in section 4. These are things that we can easily change in and out. So when we design the exhibit, we have to make sure that people get back there, that they're not lost in the mineral section. It's easy to do, but we want them to see the exhibit that they came to see. So section 1 down at the bottom right is an attractor case. That is to pull people into the hall and direct them towards the back of the room. So there's a great big sign that's there as well. And then because of COVID, when we were designing this, I didn't even think this exhibit was even going to go, because I was petrified that LA County would shut down again, and all this 2 years of preparation that I spent putting this exhibit together would just be all for naught. So we tried to come up with a lot of different plans of how to safely get visitors in and out efficiently and have them spend as much time as possible with the exhibit. So these were just a couple of brainstorming ideas that we had, was put in stanchions and really force people along a direct path, or put in stanchions in different places so that they can mingle in one area, but then migrate around and move freely. In the end, we didn't do any of this. In the end, it is just a free-for-all kind of thing. We did decide to limit the number of people coming into the entire hall itself. So there's only 55 people allowed. And one reason for that was COVID, of course. Another reason was that in previous exhibits that we had, like Green Diamonds and the big pink diamond that we had, there was just too many people in the hall, and we got a lot of complaints that nobody could see anything because everybody's clustered around a case. So we decided to limit the hall to 55, and in the gem vault, it's limited to 12 people at a time, or 16 people at a time. That's one person per case in the vault. And so far, everybody's loved it. Nobody's complained too much. So I think we're pretty happy with that. So the Attractor case, the first one, I wanted to put the biggest boat anchor gems that I could find in this particular case. And there you see them on the top left. It's this bicolor tourmaline on the left, top left. Then a nice heliodor, some aquamarines, and then the one on the right is a morganite plus beryl. That morganite plus beryl is the size of my hand. That's how big these gems are. There are hundreds of carats in size. That bicolor tourmaline is probably the size of a golf ball. I mean, the diameter of it is absolutely huge. So these are things that are really bright. They attract people from the other side of the museum, draw them closer in. And then we have the 3D designers who mock up all this stuff, because we don't get the gems and jewels ahead of time to design with. We only get the gems about a week and a half before we go live on the exhibit. So everything we have to do is plan way ahead of time. So we go to the Robert studio, we make all kinds of measurements of things, and we try to get everything set up and ready to go. So here we have plinth, the pink plinth that's in front of it to talk about the gems, and a big banner in the back to direct people down into the hall. So once you get down there, we have more graphic opportunities, what kind of information we want to convey. So on the left-hand side, there's this big empty wall up there that we now have a digital projection of drawing people back there as well. There's not a whole lot of content there, but it's a big sign that says Brilliance, Art and Science of Rare Jewels with moving graphics. It's pretty nice. And it really draws people back into that space. It's shocking how hard it is to get people back there, but it's pretty hard. And then we have cases on the outside of the vault on this black wall. You see, we put in cases that talk about the origins of gemstones. So these are not the big fancy gems that are in the vault. These are things that have a little bit more scientific value, where we want to talk about where a lot of the gemstones are coming from. So have sapphires from different places in the world and pristine examples of the types of color of sapphire that come from each one of those mines. And you can see them right next to each other. It's quite nice. And then we have a big map showing where a lot of the gemstones are coming from that are in the exhibit. So another secondary attractor case. So this is another one that pull people in. We put a brand new light in it, so it's like a lighthouse. It is so bright of light. And we put all the colors of sapphires in that one particular case. And the idea is just to bring people back there, really draw them in, and so that they can experience the rest of the hall. So in that case, it's been mixed up a little bit, but we wanted to put Padparajas in there. That's the earrings on the top right. Then we also wanted to have a rainbow of sapphire colors, so you could see these variations right next to each other. And then these big necklaces on the bottom right. These necklaces are huge, a couple feet long, and they have great big, huge sapphires in them, ranging all kinds of colors. And one thing to note is that when we were putting the exhibit together, we wanted to make sure that nothing was treated at all. All the sapphires that are in the exhibit are not heated. Every one of them is natural as they came out of the ground, except for the polishing parts, but none of them have been heated. And we all have certificates, and you can see the silk and you can see the color zonation in them. They're not perfect, but they are natural. And then we put a new video together. There's a link to the video. If you go to NHM's YouTube channel, you can view the video there before you come to the hall. It's like a 5-minute long video. It's got me in it. It's got Robert in it. Has a few of my students in it as well doing research. And then in the collector's cases, this is the cases to the left. This is where we have Robert's collaborations with Angelina Jolie. We have his collaborations with Brooke Shields. Brooke Shields was in the hall a couple weeks ago. She really liked it. Really liked the exhibit. And then just talking about that interaction between designer and client as well. That's also part of the design process. So we have new lighting, new monitor, new graphics. Lots of things are being built for this. Oh, there's Angelina. That's Robert Procop on the left. They work together. He actually designed the engagement ring between Brad Pitt and Angelina for their successful wedding. They later divorced recently, if you didn't know. So over there on the right, there's so again, we're just 3D designing everything as much as possible, like what objects are going to go where, how many objects there's going to be, what kind of lighting do they require. Update the panels, update the carpet, update the paint, make sure everything looks a little bit more modern than the current look that it has right now. Oops, there's a chat. Okay, that must have been from a while ago. And if there's something, I'm not looking at the chat, so if there's something that comes up, you can unmute and ask me questions as well. So here's some of the collector's cases. This big citrine bracelet is actually being donated by Angelina to the museum when the exhibit is over. It's on display right now, so I'm pretty excited about that. It's a very large 5-row citrine bracelet. Natural citrines are pretty rare. They're definitely not common. And this is a good example of that. But there's also a big citrine necklace, and also some of the designs that Robert and Angelina had worked on together, and even down to the faceting of the gemstone that Robert has drawn there. So all these are things that we want to convey to the visitor. Oh, there's some more vault wall cases here. Let's get into, I think I have the next slide is the vault. The actual gemstones that are in the vault wall case. So these are some of the gemstones. So a lot of sapphires here on the left from Sri Lanka and Madagascar, and also Montana as well. We got to bring in the United States sapphire industry. And the one on the bottom left is a ruby carved in kind of an egg shape. And it is the largest sapphire. I'm sorry, that's not a sapphire, it's a ruby. The largest sapphire, oh, I said it again. The largest ruby to ever come out of Montana. And Montana is not known for rubies. This is the biggest one. It's almost 24 carats in size. It's not real gemmy, it's kind of occluded, but hopefully they're still looking for more of this. This is recently discovered only about a couple years ago. And on the right is Umba sapphires. The Umba mine is interesting. That is the Umba River Valley in East Africa. And it was mined only for a short period of time from about 1967, 65 to 1971 or 1972. It's only about 5 years of mining. And it produced exceptional sapphires. There's just small deposits. And the sapphires there were unusual. They had these orange colors to them. So these are classic Umba orange color sapphires. And we have another one in there that's more violet as well. And then diamonds, of course, lots of fancy cuts of diamonds that we have, and also Zambian emeralds, which are also quite nice. So inside the vault, so there's 16 cases inside the vault. And here you can see where the labels are going to be. The labels we decided are going to be on the actual plexiglass themselves. Before they were on the deck where the gemstones were, there was labels right there next to them. This way is a little bit cleaner. We can have a little bit more design elements in there and also convey more information on this pink strip. The strip is not actually pink. We just use it pink color for this illustrative purpose. We can put more information on there and it's less distracting. So there's 16 cases. Yeah, and here's what you'll see some in the cases. So there's diamond on the left is clear diamond. It's over 100 carats in size. There is another, the blue diamond is in that same case, it's 46 carats. And we also have the world's largest green diamond, which is 71 carats. The Dresden green was the world's largest at 42 carats. That's at the Dresden Museum. That was recently robbed about a year and a half ago. Luckily, the Dresden green was at the Met at the time and was not at that museum. Then star sapphires, star rubies, we have a collection of those, rings, a whole suite of emeralds from all the famous mines in Colombia. This one is from Chivor. Chivor has this lighter colored green to it. And the crystal barrels, we have a whole case of alexandrites. Crystal barrels, the mineral name alexandrites, the gem name. And it gets the color, once there's a little bit, enough chromium that's in the crystal barrel structure to give it this color change effect. It's called alexandrite. Too much or too little, and you lose the color change effect entirely. So it is a really rare gemstone. And there is a 100.8 carat crystal barrel in the exhibit, which is the largest alexandrite in the world. And then down here, this is called the cloud diamond. It's not very pretty, but it is 1,138 carats in size. It weighs almost 3/4 of a pound in your hand. It's just huge. It's this really nice adamantine luster. And this is currently, from what I'm told by the GIA, is the largest uncut rough diamond, single crystal diamond in the world right now, until they find the next big one. And then there's a pile of rough sapphires that we have in there as well. So there's a bit rough and cuts, loose gems, and jewelry in the vault. So design elements, this was the hardest part because these gems are huge. Normal ring stands and normal necklace stands weren't going to work because these things, they would collapse under the weight of the gems. So we had to come up with something else. What would look good? So we looked at other museums. What do other museums do? We looked at jewelry stores. Jewelry stores are really pretty bad at displaying jewelry. You would think they would be really good, but they're awful. Their lighting is terrible. Their mounts are hideous. So we didn't do that. So these were some of the ones that we liked. We liked the Smithsonian block layout that's on the top left. This is their Wolfenite display. It's a little bit crowded, but it has really nice stands that can give labels pretty easily. Acrylic blocks, we already had those in stock, so we definitely used them and come up with different ways of mounting gems. I really am quite picky about how loose gems are mounted because I want to remove the shadow of the gem is really a problematic thing. I wish I had a picture of it. In fact, if you go to the American Museum's website, American Museum of Natural History, and look at their gem hall, that's a good example of how I don't like to do it. The shadows of the gem are right underneath and touching the gem from the visitor's perspective. So this is one of the ones here on the bottom, which shows the gem on the post. This is a work I did with the mount makers at LACMA, was to try and elevate the gem off the deck to remove it from its shadow. This didn't work out great because you can see all that metal work in the back. And when the gem gets really, really big, it becomes more transparent. You can see the metal through the gem. And that was, it's distracting. It's not all that nice looking. And I'll show you what we did later on. And necklace stands, we ended up taking some design elements from these things and putting together and building our own necklace stands to support the gems. So inspiration, well, there's lots of inspiration, but I wanted to remove as much Hollywood glamour as possible. I think it goes without saying that the rich and famous wear gems and jewels. That's not very inspiring. So I crossed that one off the list. Let's avoid that completely. Let's focus on the color and the color of the stones, where they come from, some of the geology as well. How do these things form in the ground? Also design elements like high contrast. So you'll see really light backgrounds and dark gems, and try to make everything as gorgeous as possible. So these are just some images that helped us through that design process. Robert Procop as well, some of his designs were pretty nice. These were his drawings. We used some of those drawings in the exhibits and took some of his fonts as well, and part of that from the exhibits, and also color schemes was also another thing we had to think about. And just some more of Robert's designs that we ended up using in the show. More sketches. We use a lot of the sketches. They were really nice. I thought really well done. Also a map. We don't have a good map in the hall to show people where even minerals come from, like where in the world. We just say it's from here, and half of the labels in the hall are of countries that don't even exist anymore. So, you know, a kid that comes in and we say we have a mineral from Czechoslovakia, he goes to a map. There's no Czechoslovakia on the map anymore. There's no USSR on a map anymore. So we need to update all those labels, of course, throughout the entire hall. But we also would like to have more of a spatial view of where minerals come from. And so these were some of the design elements that we were working with. Do you show a full map? Do you color code things? Like, what is a really nice way to convey particular information? So when you get there, you'll see that we chose none of these examples and went with a black and white image on the dark gem vault wall. And also, what kinds of fonts do we use? That was a much more complicated decision than I had was ever hoping would be. What font to use? Lots of people have their opinions about fonts. It is crazy. So I said, I'm a calligrapher. Why don't I just try to do something? And these are some of my handwriting that were considered for the Brilliance exhibit. And I ended up not liking them because I thought it was too flowery, too flourished, that was just kind of not what the exhibit was about. It was more about, you know, color and design and locality. And this font did not fit that scientific view of the gemstones. It was much more Hollywood and glamour, and that didn't work out. And so this is what it would look like. So we 3D mock it up, and this is what it would look like in the hall. And again, it didn't look good. I didn't think it looked good, and most people didn't think it looked good. The calligraphy was nice, but not for this exhibit. So this is ended up what we ended up going with, much more architectural look to match Robert Procop's designs, and also have color from the gems being part of the design as well. And also a macroscopic view of what the gemstone facets look like from the inside of the stone. So all those sorts of design elements really came across in this particular rendition. This is what we ended up going with. And it has 3D motion. It's like a gemstone is rotating behind it like a kaleidoscope. It's pretty neat. And that's what it looks like in the hall right now. We have the big pink diamond with the Brilliance on the first collector's case, and then a big pink sign telling you to take a left on the gold exhibit backboard. And also, we took this opportunity to, like, if there is a pole in the middle of a room, it shouldn't just be a pole. We can put information on that. And so this is an example of what we did on this post that's in the middle of the gem vault room that's in the case. We decided to decorate it, but also convey information on as well. So talk about pink diamonds, talk about an opportunity to talk about California emeralds, opportunity to talk about other facts, other trivia. That was kind of fun. And the work. This was just one piece of paper that I took a picture of from the fabricators of how much they had to cut and polish and all kinds of work that they had to do for all the build outs for this. They only had 4 months to do all this work, and they did it all without having even seen the gemstones in person. Everything was based on just measurements. So we had to make careful measurements. We also changed the lights in the vault as well. So this is the Alexandrites here, and this is how they're being displayed on these ring mounts. And we go from 2700 Kelvin. So this is all white balanced photos. It's not changed at all. It's just besides white balance. 2700 Kelvins on the top photo, and on the bottom photo is sunlight at around 7000 Kelvins, and it switches back and forth, and you can see this color change. And even on the cat's eye crystal barrel, you can see that pretty nicely. So new lighting, new collector's cases, new exterior cases, new entrance projections. I mean, just tons and tons of work. And this is the group of people that I was working with, a part of it anyway. So on the left, the person in the orange hats, he's a designer. He lays things out how he likes. I go in and I check it to see everything looks good. Then the next person comes in. That's the person in the black shirt there, still in the left photo. And she sets everything down and makes sure everything's quite stable. And then the next person comes in. We only had 2 people that were allowed to touch the gemstones. That's for security. And if somebody breaks something, you can always blame the curator for doing it. So it was me and her were the only ones allowed to touch the gemstones and put them in the position that the designer wanted. Then conservators come in and make sure everything is well fastened down. So in case we have an earthquake, something falls, it doesn't break. And these are some of the design layouts. So this is, on the left is a sapphire, just ridiculously colorful sapphire necklace that's in one of the Attractor cases. It's on a plexiglass stand that's elevated above a block. So you can see the shadows cast down pretty far below the necklace. Not too far below, but just enough to sort of highlight the gemstones without distraction. And the same sort of design element is on the top right with this massive pad Paraja necklace. And on the bottom, this is the ring stand mounts that we ended up going with. So we really liked the design of Robert's necklaces, both the front and the back. And so we wanted this translucent display to show the back of the gemstone as well. And the loose gems are on these big acrylic blocks. And you notice one thing, there is no shadow at all underneath the gemstones. You just see the gemstone. There's maybe a little bit of a shadow. What we did is take these acrylic blocks, put frosted polymer on top of it. And then on the bottom of them, I have reflective white paper. You can't see the white paper because the refractive index of the block is so high, but the light reflects back up into the gem and washes out most of the shadow from it. And so you really just see the gem. You don't see any shadows whatsoever. And a couple of the collector's cases, these are Brooke Shields's. On the top right is Brooke Shields's bracelets that she designed with Robert. And on the bottom left is emerald bracelet that Angelina Jolie and Robert put together. And that's it. Happy taking the questions. So I hope you see the show. Have to see it in person.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions about your displays. Sure. On frame 37, I guess.
Oh.
Where you showed the sapphire necklace sitting on the plex. About
Yes.
how high is the surface, the upper surface of the plex from the upper surface of the lower substrate?
I think it's about an inch. I think the plex is 1/4 inch plex, and then there is another 1/2 inch to 3/4 below that is mounted to a wood painted block. So the screws that you can kind of see here, there's a spacer in between the screw and the block to help keep it up. And that also is kind of nice because then we can sew down the necklace to the plexi, and you don't even see the sewing. So when you go in, if you go in there, you may have a hard time finding how these things are even stuck to the plexi as well, which was important.
The drop shadow effect makes it really nice stand.
Yeah.
Nicely done. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
very good job on that. Most impressive.
I have a question. On your loose stones, how are those secured to the bases?
That's a great question. That took a long time to figure out. Let me show you where would be one of them. I'll just stick with this one. What happened to the pink? Oh, here it is. Oh, it's on the same slide. I don't know where I was looking. The loose stones, I was just going to stick them onto the block and just hope for the best. The conservators were not really happy with that idea, but I didn't want to have anything touching the facet, because as soon as something touches the facet, you see it. So if you put your finger on there, then you see your finger touching that part of the facet. It was really a problem. So if we had any kind of anything sticking to it, you could see it. So what we ended up doing was we positioned the stone on the plex block, and then we figured out what facet it sits on the best. And once we found that facet, then we cut out some double-sided sticky tape, archival double-sided sticky tape, in the exact shape of that facet. And then we put it back down on the plex block. And you can't see it in most cases. In some cases, if you look really hard, you'll be able to see the tape that's really adhered to that one facet. But because it doesn't move into other facets, your eye is not really drawn to it as like a impurity or a distraction. It's just one slightly darker facet that you'd see. So we just use double-sided sticky tape.
Very interesting. Thank you.
Aaron, where is the largest pink diamond from?
The largest, this in the show is the second largest. And I believe that one is from South Africa somewhere. I don't know the mine where it came from. I think it's a pretty old gemstone. I think it dates back into the 80s. So I don't know. A lot of that stuff was not tracked.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Aaron.
Yes.
At the beginning, the entrance, you now have that pedestal with all the information to guide everybody to the back. What happened to the big giant piece of pink tourmaline with quartz crystals from the cryogeny mine?
Yeah, so that's an interesting story.
I can hold it for you if you like.
So I dug in. So one, we had an accident in the hall. Somebody drove a forklift into that case and knocked the cryogeny off of its mount and onto the deck. Luckily, it didn't hurt, but the mount that it was sitting on was broken. So that was a freak out moment for me. And it was also awakening for me too. Like maybe we've got some other problems in the hall besides just the cryogeny. The cart hit it so hard that it sheared off the bolts that were holding the case to the ground. These bolts are 3/4 inch stainless steel bolts that are embedded in the concrete below. So it hit hard. Cryogeny's fine. And I dug into the history of the cryogeny, and apparently that cryogeny was donated to us in the late 80s, early 90s. And it was only supposed to be on display for a couple months, in fact, until something else would go back in. But for some reason, it never moved. It never came off display, which was interesting. So we've taken the cryogeny off, and it's in Mineralsys lab, and we are working to get a new mount made for it, but it's actually in pretty bad shape. There's a lot of poor repairs that have been done to it in the past, and I want to try to fix those poor repairs and get it to a much nicer repair, so you can see the glue. It's really, in places, it's really quite bad, and I worry about the long-term stability of it. So it's going to be off display for a while, but instead we're putting in a giant green tourmaline from Brazil. It's absolutely massive. I think it was on display in the 80s, but it hasn't been shown since. So we're gonna put that one back in its place. You won't be disappointed.
Is it the one that's in the back right shelf in that back room next to the vault, the safe?
Oh, you may have seen it. Yes, that's right.
That it looks like a big blossom of flowers with like a dark. Okay, yeah, I got pictures of it. Yeah,
Cool.
I got to hold it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that one needed repair too. When that one came out of the ground, there was the bottom part of the tourmaline that's in the quartz is really loose and is almost coming off. And so when we're making a new mount for that, we have to really secure that down before we put it in its mount. And that's all done, taken care of. We're ready to start mount making, and we'll get it back into the hall once we open that part back up again.
Okay, great, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Long story, sorry.
That's okay. It's about tourmaline. I'm all ears.
So I have a different question now. Lately we've had in the news a number of smash and grab type of robberies. And is the museum bolstering themselves against that sort of thing? I mean, is there additional security you guys have had to take on, or?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's something of this value in the museum definitely needs bolstered security. So what we did is we're replacing the cases. And we did that for certain ones. And when you get into the hall, you'll see which ones that we replaced, because the plexiglass that's in there is original, and plexiglass is not supposed to last 50 years. And the glue, we're worried about that as well. So we have new plexi cases, and the plus they're all scratched up too, and it doesn't look so good. We're beginning to switch out plexi for laminated bulletproof glass. So then that does a couple things. One is a security measure that we feel much better with. The American Museum of Natural History installed this glass, the Harvard Museum installed this glass, and we're installing this glass. But also it's scratch resistant, and you don't see as many reflections. So with the plexiglass, if you wanted to take a picture, you'd have your camera in the way, is reflecting off of the glass. So the new glass that we have in is low reflectivity glass, and so it's less obvious. If you've been to the Getty Villa, they have the best glass I've ever seen in my life. It's absolutely gorgeous. You don't even see any reflection of yourself at all. It's fantastic. So that's what I'm shooting for. So higher security, better user guest experience. And yeah, also we also installed steel doors on the front and back of the hall too. So when the hall is closed, the steel doors drop down, and I can't even get through it anymore. So yeah, tons of security enhancements.
Aaron, I have a few questions, so hold on.
Okay.
So the first one is, you did mention at the beginning of your presentation your director's desire to get foot traffic, and how difficult is it on a normal exhibit to get the general public to come and see the gem hall?
Just with our regular exhibit, it's challenging, mainly because a lot of people don't know that we have such an incredible collection in the Gem and Mineral Hall. We are an afterthought for a lot of the other exhibits that are in hall. So clearly dinosaurs are the breadwinner of the Natural History Museum. And that's what draws people in. So when I'm in the hall in the morning, and I'm pretty much the only person in the hall until about 10:30, in the morning. So everybody goes to the dinosaurs, and then they're like, well, what do you want to go see next? And then they'll go to the Gem and Mineral Hall. So in the afternoon, the Gem and Mineral Hall is quite busy after people have visited the other parts. Now, we do surveys. So at the beginning of the exhibit, we did surveys of our visitors to see what they're interested in and why they came to the museum. And we're doing surveys through the exhibit, and we're also doing surveys after the exhibit. And so I'll have a better understanding of what people are expecting, what people had expected, what people were surprised by when this is all over. So that's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, because you're speaking to a crowd of people that's the first thing that we go and look at is the Gem and Mineral Hall. And then everything
Yeah.
else is, oh yeah, there's Neanderthals, and oh, there's some bugs. Oh, that's nice. So my next question was, how difficult did you find it to look at the design aspects of how everything was laid out and how things were being rearranged as a scientist, as a person who goes out in the field and sees the natural beauty, to then have it all corralled into blocks and pentagrams and pentagrams, isohedron, rondohedrons? What were those
Oh,
cases
they
that
were
are
The
oblique?
parallelograms?
Yeah, the parallelograms. Thank you, Gene. You know, how did you find that challenging to compartmentalize your love of the mineral sciences into cubes?
It's hard at first because you don't know, you have to do it, and you don't know what you want it to look like. I've seen some exhibits where they recreate gem pockets, and you walk into a gem pocket and it looks like the natural environment. And I never thought that was kind of cool, but I never thought it was really authentic. It looked synthetic, it looked man-made. And so when I look at these cases, I was like, well, they're man-made, they're synthetic. What can we use that as a platform to stand on? How could we enhance that the best that we can and not try to cover it up? So it was challenging. Working with the designers who have no geology, mineralogy, gemology training at all. They have very different ideas of how an exhibit is supposed to look, or what looks nice with what. And so that was interesting conversations to have, and I learned a lot. I think they learned a lot, and we worked together really well to come up with something that is simple, doesn't distract from the minerals that are in the cases, and definitely doesn't distract from the gemstones. And I think that's what the best thing that we can do is just keep the distractions to a minimum and make sure everything looks as well, and augment that with good content writing to go with the objects. That is really the heart of the problem, right? That's a great question. It's something we're always working on.
Well, I just, as a civil engineer and then as an artist, I'm using both hemispheres of my brain, and that comes naturally for me. That's something I've done all my life. But I also understand that there are plenty of people here that to think of things logically with their left hemisphere is a challenge, because they're always free flowing with the right hemisphere doing their jewelry design, or cutting their cabochons or whatever. And then there's a bunch of us that are very linear and straight lines, and trying to understand the floral aspects of certain displays and gems tends to be a bit of a challenge for them. So now another personal question is, will we be able to go into the lab when we come to visit next week?
Yeah, definitely. I'll be there, and I think I have a few meetings in the morning, but otherwise I'm free. And what time were you planning on coming? I forgot.
We were going to be, it's scheduled 10 to 3.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll be there the entire time.
Yeah, I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to really go and see those pesky dinosaurs. And Luisa and I are real excited about the bugs exhibit.
That's a
Um,
cool exhibit. Yeah.
And then definitely come and see you. And of course, we're going to come see you first because, well, you know, we're gem and mineral fanatics. But yeah, I was just curious. I've been telling a few people that I wasn't sure if we would get to go into the lab and see that. And then I
See our
really
new-
wished Laura was coming so that we could get that quote unquote pink amethyst tested.
It's probably just quartz.
Yeah, of course, it's amethyst.
What does Kenny Rogers say? It's all chalcedony. There ain't nothing.
I have a question for Aaron. When you design the displays, you actually think about how making the displays Instagrammable or social media friendly at all?
Yeah, we did. That was not a primary objective. That was a secondary objective. There was a couple examples that I can think of off the top of my head, like the blue diamond is one good example where we had fixed it down onto the plexi block, and there was some really strange reflections coming off of the diamond and hitting the plexi block that I really didn't like. So when you took a picture of it, it ended up looking like a mirror reflection off the table face of the diamond onto the deck, and it was really distracting. And I figured if somebody took a picture of this, they would later see like, oh, there's this massive reflection underneath the diamond, and not really enjoy the photo as much. So yeah, we thought about that as much as we could, make sure everything was photographable, memorable.
Cool, thanks.
That's
Aaron?
actually a really cool consideration.
Yeah. I went to a Cartier exhibit where it was tiaras, and you could stand and you could look at yourself in the glass and see yourself wearing the tiara or whatever the exhibit was. Have you ever considered doing something where the viewer could see themselves wearing the jewelry or
Yeah.
anything?
That's a great question. In fact, I was working on that as the gemstones were coming in. So I would 3D scan quite a few of the gemstones, and then I would make augmented reality versions of those 3D scans. And so you could have the ring, you could have your camera and point your camera at your hand, and then the ring would pop up on your hand, and you would be able to move your hand and see it, and it would be all to scale as well. Because you could use the newer phones, you have LiDAR on them. So you'd use the LiDAR rangefinder, and it would be able to measure your hand, and it would correct for the size of the stone.
Yeah, 3D ocular. Have you ever thought about having a 3D ocular thing? Because then you get the 3D crowd, and everyone wants to wear jewelry.
Yeah, I had a virtual reality filmmaker at the museum a few years back, and he took some VR photography of some of our big amethyst geodes as a test, and it was okay. It wasn't, I was not blown away by it. It was too much right in front of your face. So I think you have to really think hard about how to best do that.
Well, for another
It's cool,
time,
though.
I could help you find some people who do that professionally.
Oh, good, because
for studios, for later down the thing. Another thing is when you had those beautiful necklaces, this beautiful sapphire and all those curly cues, did you just do it, or did you take extra time making the curly cues?
We took extra time, and we had to sew all of that down in the end. Everything had to be sewn down. So everything, all the design aspects that you see is very much designed on purpose that way. And also for safety reasons too. Yeah, there's a really neat, there's a single crystal of emerald that's like in a bird cage of platinum. I'm not a huge fan of it, but the chain kind of goes in this golden ratio spiral pattern around the deck. It was pretty neat. So we had the golden ratio and spiral pattern, a little bit of science there. So it's a little bit of Easter egg that if you knew what it was, you'd enjoy it.
So do you have something you lay it down on so you could sew it in as it already made, you measured it out and computer graphics sewed it down?
Yeah, we would take a picture of it, and then we would send the Plex. We'd take the picture of the jewelry on the Plex block, and then we would send that to Fabrication, and Fabrication would laser drill holes into the plexi. And then once they figured out where all the holes should be in the plexi, then it would come back to us, and we would sew down the necklace through those holes using monofilament fishing line, something that you really can't see. And yeah, and then it's not moving, it's not going anywhere.
Wow.
A lot of work. It takes a huge amount of work to put these things together. I don't want to do it all the time.
Yeah. For cases for shows and things, I have my ruler, but I don't have my sewing needle. So kudos to your efforts.
Yeah, we don't do that
Something
at
to add
Tucson
to your
either.
repertoire, Stephanie. Okay, Aaron, I have a science nerd question.
Sure.
On the Alexandrite and the crystal beryl, that you have the different lux lighting. My concern is, what does the changing of the intensity of the photons or the kelvins on that stone, what does it do to the crystal lattice?
It doesn't do. Actually, let me think about that for a second. I wanted to say it doesn't do anything really, because it's just electrons jumping from a valence band to the conduction band, and then jumping back down, releasing the photon of interest. But for the electrons to do that, there is a minute change in bond length between the chromium and oxygen, because the electrons are moving their positions in the bond to jump up and jump down. So there's a tiny little bit of bond length variation on the order of, most likely not like 0.1 angstroms, but more like 0.0001 angstroms. So it's just tiny movements of atoms, probably within the error of the thermal displacement of the atom itself on a normal thermal displacement. So it's not really, I don't think it's adding any stress to it, but that's a very good question. And it's not going to fade the crystal beryl either, I hope. I haven't done any long-term studies.
See, that would be my concern, is that it would lock it into a color, because then the vibrations, the atomic vibrations that are occurring with the different photons are going to cause those atoms to be locked into a specific position, that over time it's going to stay that color and never change, even if you have the different types of kelvins bombarding it.
Yeah, that is a problem with some stones that I know of for sure, like chameleon diamonds, for example. Those are tricky. Some chameleon diamonds will change forever. And there are other chameleon diamonds where they'll change once or twice, and then they'll be locked in that color that they change to, and they will not budge. Super frustrating. So be careful when you buy your chameleon diamonds.
I don't.
I know
buy
everybody's
diamonds.
thinking about that. Yeah.
That's gravel to me.
We've had a crystal beryl in the main collection now for 40 years, and we take it outside and we take it back and forth, and we haven't seen any problems. In fact, it's been under the same lighting for the last couple of years now, and it still has the same good color change. I'm hoping that these won't be affected, but yeah, we do think about, that's one of the conservators' questions, is what are the lights going to do? And I have to argue for or against particular lighting conditions, and they have to agree to it.
Have you had any kunzite or fluorite or anything change drastically? You're like,
yeah, this the emerald, the rough emerald that I showed you, I'll show it to you right now. That's in the exhibit. Let's see, where is it? It was an emerald, one of our more famous emeralds. This one. It's emerald on apatite in the center photo, but that apatite was purple. It was not white like this. It was purple for the first 10 years of us having it, apparently, and then it just faded. We have kunzites from the Pala mines, and we just know that they're going to fade. And the amethyst, we just know it's eventually going to fade. We just have to deal with it. The one, and we won't even put on like prustites or any mercury bearing minerals. I know some museums do it, but we're not going to do it.
Another personal question is, I know that the last time we came and visited you a few years ago, I had mentioned that I was willing to donate some of my collection to the museum for a one of the group displays that you have on the hall or the walk to the lab. So where do I fill out that application?
We're actually changing those.
And are you going to accept my radiologicals?
That's a good question. I have been accepting radiologicals.
Yeah, but my radiologicals.
Well, I have to see them first.
Oh, they're nice. They're very nice.
Oh, good. Cool.
I'm not bringing them because I'd have to come in a separate car.
Yeah. The collector's cases are going to change. They have been like that for a long time. The museum is changing. The lab is changing. The whole design aspect of that back area is changing. I'm not getting rid of the specimens. We're just changing the focus of the cases to be more science oriented rather than focus on the collector. We will still acknowledge the collector and we will still have pictures of them, but a lot of the content will change as well.
Okay, well then I'll just ramp up my information about radiation and radiologicals, and
cool.
And I'll give you a really nice display to put together.
Nice.
Sounds to me like you just need to expand the hall, the Gem and Mineral Hall, just maybe scrunch
Agreed.
over.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
I'm
a
working hard on
thing?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working hard on that. The museum the president tells me
And hoping that you can solidify some donations and things like that, correct? Or
that's 100% correct. That is a major driving force. The museum relies on donations as well as funding from the county and funding from visitors, but donations are a big part of that. And having these kinds of shows draw in a crowd that the dinosaur exhibit wouldn't draw in. This is a completely different strategy for the museum to take. So it's good for them.
are you
Hopefully
able
good
to
for me.
are you able to keep numbers on like who is coming in for what and what is the draw if they're coming to the mineral section versus other sections when they're checking in? Like, do you have numbers that like we're here specifically for?
Yeah.
And does that help? I don't know.
It definitely helps. It helps plan future exhibits. It helps plan marketing campaigns. It helps a lot of things. And we installed new people trackers in the hall as well that measure not only how many people are coming in, but also keeps track of your height as well. So you're not like double counting people. I know it's a little weird, but we can.
I was going to say
ones.
kids versus adults, people that are maybe, but when you said height trackers.
we didn't want to overcount too. We wanted to make sure that we're getting reliable numbers, and we have one way in the back of the hall, like how many people are going all the way to the back of the exhibit versus how many people are only staying in a certain area. And at the end, we'll plot all that information up, and that will inform future design aspects of it.
Well, the Mammals of North America is old and tired, so you can take over that hall.
I will just go right into it. Just move right into it.
I mean, you guys share a common wall.
Well, yeah.
The elephants can move over.
There's a small hall, in fact, right in between the two. And that hall is going to be taken over by the new NHM Commons project. So we're getting a whole new facade and a whole new thing. It's like $75 million project that we're just now starting construction on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, Aaron.
Yeah.
Going back to the tourmaline, the cryogeny, when you go in there and you look at that, on the far right wall of that, you got Northern, Central, and Southern California minerals. Is that display still up?
Yes, and there's no plans of taking that down. That will I'll always have a California wall, California display in no matter what happens.
Okay. Got it. I didn't see it on the plans. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, that's important for
Yep.
me. It's important for the museum. It's important for all y'all.
Yes. I've sent a lot of people in there to go and look at that wall, especially
Cool.
for the southern, especially for the tourmaline, the Himalaya, and ocean view. I tell them to go in there, and they can they're not going to get that when they go to the dig site, but they can. It gets them jonesed up, ready to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think the gold hall, nothing will happen to that. Although I am kind of worried about smash and grabs of gold. That's once you melt down gold, it's not traceable anymore.
I'll get that new glass installed.
Yeah.
Fast. World's going nuts.
Well, the numbers so far for the individuals that are signed up, myself included, is 9. So
Oh,
I want
well,
to get
crap.
more people. Sign up, sign up, sign up.
Real quick, Aaron, do you have to have a negative test or vaccine card to get in?
Yes, you do. Either one is acceptable.
What happens if you've already had COVID?
Doesn't mean anything to
You
the
still have
authorities.
to have a negative test, Adrian.
Okay, just asking.
Up
Just asking.
to
I don't deal with this crap.
up to
Within-
72 hours prior to visit.
Got it. Okay.
And masks are mandated
Yeah.
the
I got
entire
in
time
trouble.
you're in this store or in the facility.
Museum. It is LA County for sure. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you, Aaron. That was a great presentation.
Yes.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Indeed. Thank you. We're so excited, and definitely sign up next Wednesday, the 9th, if you'd like to see all of these beautiful things in person, once of a lifetime opportunity for sure. Okay. Thank you, Aaron. Oh my gosh. We're so excited to see you next week. And we're always so thankful for you spending your hard-earned time off with us here at
Oh,
OGMS.
thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That was
Awesome.
really interesting. I really loved how
Yeah.
you guys thought out from the absolute beginning to the end and all of your considerations. It was wonderful. It was very educational.
Thank
Yeah. The double stick tape on the facet for no shadow. I took a double note of that one for sure. So I'm gonna look for it, but I like it a lot.
Cool.
That's a lot of effort for sure. We're excited to see it.
And next time you're in Ventura, you have to go to Fox Fine Jewelry to see Louisa and her excellent display abilities.
Yeah,
Awesome.
come on in. I don't do the displays themselves or the lighting, but I do get to share a lot of the wonderful things that we have to offer, and we have good enough lighting to actually experience it for real. And we do take field trips to the back garden so we can see what it looks like in the daylight too, because that makes a big
Great.
difference. And you know, because we are very nitpicky, you know, you're never so mean to a gem until you put it side by side with something else, right? You know. And so
Definitely.
it's good to let it live in other lighting and other environments to really experience it so they can know what they're getting and be confident that it's exactly what they're looking for. So it's very important. Okay, well, you know, you're always welcome to join us for the regular business meeting. We will not
I've got kids to take care of.
hold it
Sorry.
against you if you log
They're
out.
hungry.
Thank you, Aaron.
Of course.
Great
Thank you
evening.
very
We'll see you
much.
Thank you
next
so
week.
much. We'll
Bye.
see you next week.